Hello and welcome to This Grand Life, where we inspire, celebrate, and empower families to live their best lives. I'm Julie Elstrup, your hostess for the show, where we will share stories of inspiration with family, friends. We've got our dog Truffle here hanging out with us today. What I'd like to do today is to share my story, my journey, a little bit of it. I'm filming here in my photography studio where I work with families, anybody who wants to have a portrait taken. A lot of times they're people who have not had a portrait taken in years, and sometimes they're even afraid of the camera, don't want to be photographed. We create an environment here that is relaxing and comfortable and supportive so that you can shine, because I believe when we let our own light shine, we give others permission to do the same. The story that I'd like to share with you today is a little bit of my story in becoming a professional photographer. My grandparents owned a camera store back when my mom was a child, and I always thought it would be really hard to be a photographer. Not really sure why. I've loved photography since I was 6 or 7 years old. I had one of those little Instamatic cameras that had the flash cube on top, and it would have a funny smell, you know, when the flash went off, and then it would turn around and turn around. And I've loved photography ever since then. I studied photography in high school, and even in college at the University of Illinois, I took every photojournalism class that was available. And then I felt like I had to be a real adult and get a real job. And so I did some other kinds of things that were great for a time. And I was on sabbatical, living in Spain for about 6 months. And it was a really hard time in my life. It was a time that I had gone through a brutal divorce, and I struggled with my relationship with my children. So at the end of my trip, my sabbatical in Spain, I decided to walk on the Camino de Santiago. And the Camino de Santiago is an ancient pilgrimage, and all over Europe, roads lead to the Compostela de Santiago, which is in Galicia in northern Spain. And I decided that I was going to walk for 3 weeks. And originally my plan is that I was going to walk 40 kilometers or 26 miles a day, which is a marathon. And I had been training and running many marathons at that time in my life, and I thought, I can do that, that's easy. So I started out on the border of Spain and France in the Pyrenees in a town called Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port, the walking portal into Spain. And I walked and I met people from all over the world: Germany, Spain, England, Korea, South Africa. It was phenomenal. I met Americans too, but not very many Americans were there at the time. And one day, after a long walk, about 10 or 12 miles, we came to our albergue, which is like an Airbnb light. I mean, really all levels of accommodations. This one was pretty rustic. We were pretty tired that day. I walked up the stairs slowly, and I plopped my backpack onto the ground, and I flopped myself onto the bed, and the albergue owner said, "Levantate, get off the bed," because I hadn't taken a shower yet and I was all sweaty. And a few moments later, he came and he asked me in Spanish, because I'd been studying Spanish for the last 5-6 months, if we would like to have a pilgrim's mass. And there were 5 of us there that evening, and I was the only one that spoke both Spanish and English. And I asked all of the other pilgrims, the peregrinos, if they would be interested in having a pilgrim's mass. And of course, everybody said yes. He had permission from the local priest. So we walked down to this very small, ancient temple that felt very much like it was probably an ancient pagan temple. And we walked inside. He opened this big door. It was dark and it was cold, and we all walked in. And I sat in the front pew that was hard. It was hard. And I was hungry and tired and really looking forward to hearing this Mass. And so the 5 of us sat there, and he started to speak, and I listened, and I let the words just soak in. And after a few minutes, I heard this voice, this beautiful, beautiful voice, singing the sweetest song. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound to save a wretch like me. At this point, tears are coming down my cheeks. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was grace that made me see. And I cried and I cried. And when the Mass was over, I stood up and I grabbed my pack. I grabbed my camera because I'd been a lifelong photographer, as I mentioned earlier. And I took some pictures in this tiny, tiny chapel. I walked to the back of the temple where my friend Tobias, who's from Germany, was waiting for me. And I said, Tobias, thank you for singing Amazing Grace. Your voice is beautiful. He had told me earlier in our walk that he sings in his choir at home in Germany. And Tobias is a big, typical German guy. He had his hands folded over his chest, and he said, Julie, I wasn't singing Amazing Grace. That's an American hymn. And I said, well, you heard it. You heard that beautiful song, didn't you? And he said, no, didn't hear anybody singing. And I knew at that moment that I had a bigger purpose, and that my life, that there's something needed to change and something needed to happen. And that's when I came home about a week or two later, and I decided that I needed to start a portrait studio, and I really wanted to celebrate family and inspire people and empower others, really to just see the beauty of who they are and who is part of their family. So that's what I did. I came home and I started my studio. What I'd like to share with you next time is a little bit about why portraits and why family, and how that serves my clients and my community and the world. I have photographed people all over the world, and I'm excited to share that chapter with you. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to follow me. Feel free to put any notes down in the comments. I really am glad that you joined me today, and I look forward to sharing more with you as we celebrate this grand life.